I'm a man who believed that I died 20 years ago, and I live like a man who is dead already. I have no fear whatsoever of anybody or anything.
Gary Webb. I am an investigative journalist, and in 1996, I wrote a series of stories entitled Dark Alliance, which was about CIA involvement in drug trafficking.
I knew a man who once said death smiles at us all. All a man can do is smile back.
We've both been skull and bone, the secret society. It's so secret we can't talk about it. What does that mean for America? The conspiracy theorists are going to go on. I'm sure they are. I don't know. I haven't seen the rest. Number 322.
I have duty to report this afternoon that my friend and colleague Tim Russert collapsed and died early this afternoon.
I may die in this cell tonight or in the arena tomorrow. I am a slave. What possible difference can I make?
And no official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, civilian or military, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know.
What is going on, you guys? Good morning. Welcome to the Morning Dump with, of course, Austin Picard from the Underclass Podcast. So I figured this morning we could start by kind of piggybacking off of what we've been discussing over the past couple of episodes, and that's basically just PSYOP season, right? This oversaturated landscape of spooks and mind manipulators, right? And good morning, everybody. What's going on? So I kind of think that what, of course, has been making the rounds, going somewhat viral in the recent couple of days, has been this former CIA targeter, which that's a strange, kind of title, but this woman by the name of Sarah Adams, right? And of course, we've been discussing this Sean Ryan podcast quite a bit at length because of the fact that it clearly, to me, seems to have been some sort of Gladio-style limited hangout, right? Where this woman seems to kind of, follow that narrative through to as far as like driving home this sort of manufactured domestic Islamic terrorism threat sponsored by Al-Qaeda, and also even going as far as to kind of like predicting casualty numbers, which that was something I didn't realize was happening by former CIA operatives who are once again just apparently now in the podcasting space, which to me raises a lot of suspicion because, of course, we are, we're well aware of the obvious death of the free press and any sort of actual accountability to be had in that sort of dynamic between power and journalism at this moment. And so you have this. We've talked about it many times, this sort of, escape into the alternative media landscape. But then there's this, attempted redirection that's I believe being, very efficiently and effectively, implemented in this very, alternative media landscape. And that is to flood that very landscape with these mind manipulating spooks, right? Which we, I think, going over the various claims that Sam Shoemate was making on Sean's podcast, it's very difficult not to be extremely skeptical, right? At this point. So especially we're talking, ratcheting up, like fear mongering to the point of invisible bombs and right, being smuggled into the U.S. And yeah, it's just to me it very much seems like this new wave of recycled propaganda that is only inevitably going to result in a very similar consequence of sort of what it achieved in the past. And I think that's very much by design, right? They've these intelligence agents and operatives have long studied these psychological warfare planners have long studied what is useful within the operational standpoint, the field, as far as on the ground and implementing these techniques in the field. And yeah, they just have to rebrand the techniques sort of, right, with these with the new age model that is a little bit more acceptable to the public, I believe, at this moment. And that is where we get these absolute extraordinary claims being made by these obvious intelligence disinformation assets. And so we should start just first by kind of introducing this woman to I guess we'll discuss her for just a brief moment, and then we'll kind of transition into we at some point. I definitely think we should discuss the Delphi murders, certainly because, by the way, I did just speak with William Ramsey yesterday, and we're gonna end up doing an episode on the Delphi murders, I believe, on the 16th. So look out for that. That'll be a good episode. It's definitely something that's still very relevant at this moment. And I believe that legitimately a federal cover up has taken place. And so we'll have to get into the dirty details of all of that. But yeah, this whole narrative of the year of you know, radical Islamic terrorism, influenced by ISIS and Al Qaeda, um, feels too much like playbook, right? As far as recycled playbook and pattern recognition, it's just absolutely impossible for me to wrap my head around the idea that the average man that this would be an effective propaganda technique at this moment. But people will fall into the trap, right, of this sort of age old boogeyman that's been constructed, and we've been conditioned to accept, and that is that of radical Islamic terrorism, right? And so, although the vast majority of the public is at this point has even acknowledged the fact that ISIS was a construct of the intelligence community and the CIA. But what's up, buddy? Good morning. Good morning, schizos. It is truly the year of the schizo, right? Like at this point, that it's kind of at least we're perfectly suited for this moment in time. But yeah, I will say I feel a little bit sorry for people who have yet to develop that ability of critical thinking, and merely for the fact that I think that unfortunately, what's up, Jules? How you doing, brother? Um, yeah, I just honestly, it's a sad prospect, right? And so what we should first cover is again Sarah Adams and this strange narrative taking form around this whole Sean Ryan and this radical Islamic terrorism threat, allegedly. And as I mentioned, they put actual casualty numbers on this, right? They like it's honestly it's amazing to me that that isn't just eyebrow raising enough, right? To instantly give everyone pause. The fact that they would flat out predict casualty numbers, clearly generating fear, which is what these mind manipulators deal in. It's deception and fear and stoking that tension. And it's due to the fact that clearly we lose all ability, as I've said before, to think critically, and in those times of crises, and that that is what they rely on, right? And it's what they've relied on with these techniques for generations, right? It's a very reliable approach, and so let's see what this woman has to say. I think the first place we should probably start with her is, let's see. There's a couple of different videos I want to show because it's absolutely ridiculous once you get a feel for this woman's personality, because that alone seems like this entire thing is a staged, scripted, narrative in itself. And so let's present this very quickly. Share this. All right. Let's see. This is from Sean Ryan himself, but I think honestly this longer version is more worthwhile, and it's kind of insane because this is where this video of the former CIA agent Sarah Adams claiming that Al Qaeda is planning a coordinated multi-city attack for 2025. That gets very interesting, and you start to wonder what they truly have in store for us in this upcoming year, right? And good morning, buddy. So let's see what let's see what she has to say here.
Am I wrong on that?
So I don't.
If I remember correctly, Scott told me that Al Qaeda is basically predicting that the casualty count will be between 50 and 60,000 Americans dead. Am I wrong on that?
So I don't know the count that they're predicting. What I do know is Al Qaeda trained and sent 1,000 attackers.
1,000 attackers. When did they come through?
So they finished training and they deployed them. Now, depending on how they come through, it could take different times, right? So the fastest I've seen an Afghan leave Afghanistan and get over the border illegally is about 3 weeks. Now, if you get a tourist visa and a Saudi's passport, he can fly the day after he gets his visa, right? So it depends, because they are fine getting people in however they can get them in, and they actually prefer legal immigration, as you can imagine, because they want basically the attackers to sit here and wait. If they're legal, they're not going to raise any alarm bells.
So wait a minute. I just want to clarify. You are 100% certain that there are 1,000 plus Al-Qaeda trained fighters within the United States borders?
Well, Al-Qaeda says they trained and deployed 1,000 for this attack. First off, I think there's more than 1,000 Al-Qaeda members in the United States. But for the Homeland attack, that number is based on what Al-Qaeda is saying. So they could exaggerate it. However, they did have about 1,400 in the Hamas attack. So the number is not off from what they did in the first round of attacks.
Is there any indication of what kind of attacks these are going to be? Well, actually, before we get into that, how old is this information?
I mean, it's ongoing. So the training's already done, right? So all the training info is now old because they trained all the Homeland attackers, if that makes sense. So like next week, you're not going to get info of a Homeland attacker probably at a terrorist camp because it's already done. So all this has been in the last year.
So it's been over a year. It's been a year.
Because this was a continuation. So they planned October 7th first, and then they rolled into planning this after.
Are we next, or is Europe next?
I think the embassy attacks are next, in my opinion.
What are they waiting for the embassies?
I don't think they're waiting. I think it took time to train them. They've now approved them, and they've now moved into the operational stage.
What about the U.S.?
So the U.S., from what we've seen, I told you about the camps, right? That there's the advanced urban warfare. So we think it's going to look like October 7th, but it's actually based on, and October 7th was probably also based on it. It's based on the Mumbai attacks that occurred 15 years ago in Delhi, India. And we believe this for multiple reasons.
What happened there? Before we dig into that.
Yeah, we talked about this. I think it was my first episode. It was basically a terrorist group, Lashkar-e-Taiba. They did a number, it's called swarming attacks. They did a number of attacks in New Delhi, at a hotel, the Taj Mahal, I believe it was called, at like basically the train station, etc. The interesting thing about it, and this is why they're going to employ it now, is those terrorists were given kind of like latitude. One, they could change the location they were attacking, and they could change the modus operandi they were using. So for example, when they went in the train station, it was supposed to be a bombing. When they got in there, they said, wow, we can kill more people just shooting them than putting the bomb together, and they shot them. Another thing that they did is in real time, information was being passed to them. So when they were in the Taj Mahal, they were being told what was on the press and what the police were doing, and they changed basically some of their movements in the hotel to make the attack last longer, okay? So this is the part that's going to be different, right? So Al-Qaeda always wants to innovate when it does its next attack, right? So I've already told you about the innovation of the suicide vests. Well, do you know we really haven't had a suicide bombing in the United States ever? There's the Nashville guy who did the strange, blew himself up in the car early in the morning when no one was around. That's kind of it.
The AT&T building.
Yep. So we have not had a man walk up to a building with a suicide vest on the United States. Americans don't understand this. Al-Qaeda knows this, right? So this is new and innovative, especially now. You don't have to walk outside of the building. You can walk in the building because of the advancement of the vest. The other thing is, in the United States, we haven't had Fideian attackers. Do you know what this is? I mean, you'll know when I explain it. If you fought in like, I don't know, Ramadi, Fallujah, you've seen these. So the concept is the terrorist fights to the death. So he's not exactly a suicide bomber, but he will fight till either all of us are dead or all of his people are dead, right? So this can go on for multiple days, like the plan was for Mumbai, for example. So we think it's going to be a swarming attack, right? Multiple different attacks at one time across multiple cities. We think there will be suicide bombers just because some of the attackers went through suicide bomber training and they have these vests, right? And then we think there's these Fideian attackers who will carry on until they're killed.
So there is a direct connection that she made to October 7, of course, which is hard to miss. And beyond that, it's just this clear and deliberate propagandistic narrative of stoking this fear, right? Especially in regard directly to regarding this radical Islamic terrorism threat. And so that is clearly, that was in December, right? Leading directly into the New Year attack. And so I don't see any sort of, way that this is a coincidence.
If I remember correctly, Scott told.
But then you have her going to the extent of even like actual, first of all, what is a CIA targeter? Because that's a very strange title, as I said before, that I have never been aware of, but until now. So I will have to do a little more further research on exactly what role a CIA targeter performs within the operational standpoint of the agency itself. That would be, I'm sure, a very interesting, right, a rundown or breakdown. But this is another video that I discovered a couple days ago or yesterday of her, this former CIA agent, Sarah Adams, claiming that Al-Qaeda had this multi-city coordinated attack planned for this upcoming year as well. And listening to this, it's so difficult to take her as some sort of clandestine professional. It's a very strange way to present this information in the first place. But of course, you get this desired reaction from the hosts of the podcast itself, which obviously, leans into the more, more of the psychological framework of sort of just, defending yourself and your family from any sort of outside threat. And this is kind of like, in my mind, a misdirection technique as well. But so let's check out how she kind of stages this narrative on this other podcast called the Shark Coast Tactical Podcast. I believe it was it's a podcast that is filmed at their gun shop, but I'm not entirely certain who these individuals are, other than Sarah Adams herself, the former spook. So let's listen in.
The plot to
Back to the interesting point. You said that you guys think that they've sent at least 15. Al Qaeda alone has sent at least 1,500 people here in the United States.
correct.
What do they plan on doing with them?
They have a 2025 multi-coordinated, multi-city plot to avenge the death of Osama bin Laden.
Okay, so I've watched you on podcasts. I've never heard that. Could you explain that more?
We're going to put a report on Monday, but essentially, Al Qaeda is actually who helped plan the Hamas attacks. The Hamas attacks is a dress rehearsal. So the Hamas attacks is the practice attack, and then the big attack is going to be in the United States and then in 4 countries in Europe.
Okay. You guys want to go home and load magazines?
Yeah,
Yes.
I'm thinking.
I hope a lot of people come into your shop and stock up. It would be smart.
Really?
Wow.
Yes.
What's the time frame?
All we know is that the attack was planned for 2025.
Back to the interesting point. You said that
is absolutely ridiculous.
You guys think that
to
they've
me.
sent at least 15.
Well, I guess we need to shit ourselves with fear because clearly the CIA wants us to believe that there is a major pipeline into the domestic United States of Al Qaeda and ISIS, radical Islamic terrorists that are going to do us serious harm in this upcoming year. So, yeah, I had mentioned yesterday, it's kind of hilarious that Israel just wants Iran in the fold. Yeah, that is always on the short list of agenda items that they're attempting to achieve. And there's no coincidence that Biden happened to be at Camp David when he addressed the public regarding these tragic events that took place on New Year's. But yeah, it makes all the sense in the world that we would need to, especially they had just, I think it's kind of strange now that I'm thinking about it, how Ken mentioned the fact that right there they're kind of tying Iran into this narrative as well with this not only with the invisible bombs, right, but they're claiming Iranian missiles were smuggled through legal United States checkpoints of entry in a plot to down Trump's jet. And so Trump allegedly had to fly private or something. I believe he said, I can't recall now. Let me see what he did say.
In a legal entry, in a legal point of entry along the border. I'd have to pull up the original reporting, but we had the actual.
So we now have Iranian missiles. Who knows how many inside the United States?
That is not something you're going to see in a lot of places. Like I said, I didn't even want to talk about it. It was one of those things where I was just amplifying what he was putting out already, because I was like, man, I don't know about putting this out. But it was something we found was pertinent, because at the time, Trump was still campaigning. He was flying around, and there was the reports were their intent was to take down Trump's airplane. So at the time, Secret Service switched things up a bit, and allegedly, from what I've told, they started flying him around on charters for a while until they could identify and kind of mitigate that threat. But that was the reporting stream that was coming out at the time. Feds handled it, off my plate.
I mean,
entry.
Well, I'm sure that Trump was, I'm sure he was flying on Epstein's plane, and it was just a mere coincidence that occurred as well during that time. I did think that was so funny whenever it was exposed that Trump had been utilizing Epstein's former plane during the campaign trail. But anyway, we should not at all be shocked, especially since we're aware of the direct connections not only to Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein, but also her father, the deep state intelligence double agent, essentially, who was a Mossad asset. And once he, Robert Maxwell, right, Ghislaine's father, and once he essentially went bankrupt in many ways, he was just, he was in a very bad way and owed a lot of money to a lot of very powerful individuals. And yeah, Mossad did not come to his aid. And as he attempted to leverage his knowledge about certain, clandestine operations against the Mossad, well, he was found dead, right? Falling off of his yacht, the Lady Ghislaine. And it just so happened that it seemed to have been a Mossad hit squad execution team that had rolled up to his yacht, the Lady Ghislaine, in a yeah. Anyway, it's just absolutely strange when you discover these deep state connections that directly tie in, and you no longer kind of fall in under that naive uh, you know a veil of right, just the partisan delusion that we've discussed over the past couple of episodes, where it's just like, how could you continue to believe, right, that these individuals within the political class have your best interest at heart? I mean, it couldn't be more obvious that, right, they just, I don't think that we can even comprehend the lifestyle, right, of these various dynastic families who have had such deep ties, to this clear, you know, nexus of power between public and private, and this um, you know bureaucratic oligarchy that is entirely unaccountable to any sort of, voting electorate of any kind. That is why I believe democracy is only the veil of ignorance, right? It's truly just, a misconception, right? I believe that it's the tyranny of the majority if voting even works to begin with, right? Because I truly believe it's more of a mask, and but to kind of, you know, maintain, right, the deception of a sort of again, that illusion of accountability, right, that we have any sort of actual claim, to hold these powerful individuals accountable. And so again, we're seeing this in just extraordinarily ridiculous narrative being presented to the public by these former spooks who obviously, once CIA, always CIA, as they say. And that very much, my perspective on this. But yeah, if we're going to believe that, well, I will say that it is important to at least acknowledge the fact that, they are conditioning us, right, to clearly expect something coming down the pike, right? And so I believe that when that happened in December, of course, but so that was just before these recent attacks. But also, it's very clear and obvious that what they want us to inevitably embrace is this sort of looming threat, right, that is being posed by this invisible enemy, which again is always the case, and that is exactly why, right, they utilize this fear stoking mechanism, right, and so once again, we're going to have so many people who fall within the two party delusion and the partisan paradigm that unfortunately, there will be some sort of call, right, for intervention in order to protect the homeland, right? Because wasn't that always the propaganda? We have to fight them over there, or we'll have to, right, or we'll have to fight them here, and it's never been more of a lie. But all right, so beyond that, I think there was a one or two other things I wanted to show. Let's see. Oh yes, perfect example of course, this same woman, Sarah Adams, trotting out this narrative of the people questioning 9/11 helping Al Qaeda, right? So again, it's hilarious because we had just I used the example of the Jeddah consulate and providing the vast majority of the alleged hijackers in 9/11 their passports, even though right, and it was a CIA consulate that was approving these visas, even though they were being denied from originally. It would be the authority figures within the consulate itself would intervene, right, and overrule the decision that was being made to deny the visas to these clearly threatening individuals that had very suspicious backgrounds that wouldn't have otherwise gained access to entry into the United States. And isn't that how the intelligence community operates on on a common, I would say it's very commonplace. And so of course you're going to have this woman trotting out this absolute ridiculous connection to anyone questioning 9/11 helping Al Qaeda, right? Because that is a misdirection technique to keep us from actually considering the idea of the CIA involvement into the 9/11 attacks, which all of us who have studied 9/11 are very, very aware of. And yeah, let alone right the Lucky Larry Silverstein and the Bin Ladens and the Bushes, right? Let's watch this last video, and then we'll transition away from this very obvious spook who is not a former CIA operative, but is very much seemingly an active current asset of presenting these false narratives.
Joke like, yes, we are for.
Is anybody doing anything?
No, and actually, Al Qaeda makes a joke out of the fact that they move the money we give to the Taliban to the camps that train the homeland attackers, right? So it's almost like an insider joke, like, yes, we are forcing America to fund their own attacks. So that is the plan too, that the money will go back to us and our government. And then that makes Americans also look at our government like it's an inside job. You knew it, right? And so Al Qaeda is going to play that game, which is really interesting. Al Qaeda found the Building 7 conspiracy stuff fascinating. And they have actually had discussions about how we could do ruses and bring in the Building 7 people to make them blame their government more. So they're actually even looking at our conspiracies and targeting those people for the homeland attack. So basically those people almost back Al Qaeda as revolutionaries and rebels and heroes against our government. Kind of like how the Hamas supporters do it.
All right. So we have a list of stuff to go down here. I think since we're on funding the Taliban.
Wow. Okay. So I guess we should no longer question 9/11, right? Because we're aiding the Taliban and Al Qaeda, you guys. So we have to stop questioning if the CIA was involved. So now I think it's important to. Oh yeah, I find it hilarious that we were just talking about the Havana syndrome, right? I think it was last week when I was talking with Jose about all of this, and it looks like my buddy Daniel. She looks like Barbra Streisand, and yes, I'm implying something. Oh man, yeah, this is. I think it's very difficult not to remain skeptical here regarding these narratives, and obviously this is propaganda being presented, but something that is worth mentioning, since I had talked about the Havana syndrome not long ago, is this interesting Homeland Security Committee meeting, which kind of exposed these silent weapons as being a legitimate operational, technical capability, right? And so yeah, the conspiratorial report on Twitter says that the U.S. government admitted weaponized technology exists that mimics psychosis and schizophrenia, and I found this to be a very interesting clip because it does kind of like provide more of legitimate credibility to the fact that there are obviously more sophisticated techniques of not only mind control, but psychological warfare techniques that have been, very much advanced and evolved and sophisticated over time, to where, what we can, as far as our comprehension and our ability to conceptualize what they've been able to achieve, as far as what they can, um, engage in operationally on the ground, as far as utilizing these advanced techniques to their own benefit, unbeknownst to clearly, the general public. Then again, it's a sad state of affairs, because unfortunately we can't if you're unaware, right, of the actual technical capability, then how can you even defend against it, right, in the first place? And so, yeah, it's a terrifying prospect, but let's check out what they say here, because I think it's something important for people to be aware of.
Assessments here, guys, if your assessments here are correct, these are very covert weapons, aren't they?
That's correct. There's no entry or exit wound. How they're designed is to make the target feel like they're crazy, like they're imagining things.
And you guys also said that these attacks are happening right here.
And that is exactly what we talked about yesterday with Tamerlan Tsarnaev, right? And yeah, too many of these kind of manufactured patsies, right? They share these very similar characteristics and qualities leading up to the events. And yeah, no coincidence in my mind at all. But yeah, that in itself is something that seems very extraordinary to me.
In this city, is that correct?
I mean, there have been some that have gone public with respect to Washington, D.C.
I think it was Mr. Grozev said you spoke to a Russian agent who said that they believe that Americans are using these same weapons on them. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Might that have something to do with part of the CIA's motive to cover up the existence of this tech and these weapons?
That is a very logical possibility.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Gentleman yields. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from New York, Mr. Goldman, for his round of questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to our witnesses for being here. Mr. Grozev, I want to follow up a little bit on the interactions you've had with Russian intelligence about these AHIs. And Mr. Zaid, I want to ask, and this is a hypothetical, but I'm trying to understand why our government would try to block information sharing or conceal information that they have. And one thing that comes to mind is whether there's an operational risk to revealing any of the details of their investigation. Is that something that you have come across in any of your work?
There's a lot of reasons why the information might not be publicly released. And I do think that's something we could address more in a classified environment to explain that. But there are understandable reasons why the U.S. government has not revealed much of what it knows.
There's some long-term things that needs to be done in terms of new acts. But in the short term, we need to do things like implement the original Havana Act. DOD still hasn't done it.
So if you have technology that can legitimately induce psychosis behavior and schizophrenic behavior, then what else are you able to achieve in the field, right? And knowing what MK Ultra accomplished as far as Blue Book and or Bluebird. I'm trying to remember now because I have so many operations mingled in my mind at this moment. But it's just, they had different training courses. Basically, one was Delta was what it was called, and it was specifically for assassins, right? To manufacture, sort of Manchurians, right? Manchurian candidate assassins, right? And then put them in the field. It was very much like Operation Chaos and Gladio and the Phoenix operation. in Vietnam, and that's very much why I had talked about Colston Westbrook yesterday. He's a former CIA asset or agent operative in the Phoenix Project, who was tasked with returning from Vietnam and then um, uh, basically becoming a professor at Berkeley University, where he set up a pipeline to these state corrections facilities and state correctional facilities and these various federal facilities as well for like where they were running these MK Ultra operations, and he would have these well-to-do, students from Berkeley um, attending going directly to these federal correctional facilities. And this was all within the context of the California State Correctional, I believe it was the California State Prison complex that was running this operation on behalf of the intelligence community. And so you had compromised assets right within these private institutions and these federal correctional facilities as well. And then you also had a representation in these mental facilities at the time. And so it was a very strange, overlapping operational technique, but it was very clear that chaos was much more than just a clandestine domestic operation. It was clearly there was a psychological aspect to it, right? Psychological warfare aspect to it. And so they were advancing these techniques through just using various drugs and just experimenting on prisoners, and then they'd set up this pipeline between the university and the prisons, and they would then exploit this pipeline and by clearly victimizing the students who were a part of these courses. And one of those students happened to be Patty Hearst, right, who had been, before her kidnapping, had been going down to the facility where Cinque de Freeze was being held and being experimented on through those various techniques. And so, again, this has been, decades in the making as far as the abilities that they've very much, sophisticated. And so again, we are in a place where, it's like it's very difficult to kind of engage with the real world that we actually reside in, and with the understanding and the conceptual ability, right, to truly grasp what the ruling class is capable of. And so that is where, you know thankfully, you know I was saved from that delusion, right? Because it takes a lot of effort and discipline and time and objectivity and willingness to reflect on ideas. And I'm in no way, in my final form. And I hope that none of us are, and that we continue to evolve and grow in our ideas. But you know, by now, if you haven't come to the realization, right, that we live in a world that is just, you know, smoke and mirrors on a daily basis, right? Just these deceptive, the deceptive framework of reality itself, right? And if you can actually, you know, manipulate the perception of reality to that extent, right? Well, perception is reality, as they say, right? And so if you have no other foundational, as far as you haven't, sort of, um, done what is necessary to create the foundation, that you can rely on, to where you will not be so easily deceived in the next false flag event, or the next manufactured crisis, or the next time that fear is introduced into the equation, you know, um, then maybe that layer of propaganda that is circulating around you, it will be far easier, to diagnose and assess for what it is. And I think that that is the pattern recognition of all of this, and the reason that that you know doing this research is valuable in the first place, because it arms you with that ability, right? And I think that is such a valuable thing. And it's the only way we can break free from this construct, this constructed reality that's designed, to control us in more ways than one, and not only, ideologically, but spiritually, right? And so we find ourselves again in the midst of a moral crisis, right? And and we wonder why. And we keep turning to these this elite oligarchy, this bureaucratic, unelected class of, and it's just to imagine that the ultimate goal is not to, isn't to facilitate more and more of a stranglehold on that very power that they've accumulated over this amount of time. Then it it seems as if you know that vulnerability, it just it's naivete, and it has to be from just n- this lack of awareness, as far as just lack of understanding of the historical context of what these intelligence agencies are capable of, right? And so if you, and you can go all the way back to JFK, right? You can go all the way back to when they created the term conspiracy theorist, right? And it's hilarious that Sarah Adams was just, kind of speaking in those terms, right? Because it's like, oh well, if they're weaponizing conspiracy theories, that's basically what she was saying, is that Al Qaeda and the Taliban, are weaponizing conspiracy theories. So if you believe in these conspiracy theories, then you're being controlled by the enemy. And what a misconception that is, because you can go back, like I said, to 1976, when the FOIA request from the New York Times uncovered the existence of an internal document published and circulated within the CIA in 1967. So you're talking, you know, it's 5 years after the assassination of JFK, and this document is circulating within the agency, and this is before the Warren Commission, and so you have the title of the document. It was called "Countering Criticism of the Warren Report," and it provides clear concerns as well as recommended action in order to discredit the critics of the official report's findings in regard to the Kennedy assassination. So in the memo, they resort to using the term conspiracy theories as a pejorative to undermine and dismiss any criticism of the official narrative, including conspiracy theories have frequently thrown suspicion on our organization. This is a quote from the agency. Conspiracy theories have frequently thrown suspicion on our organization. For example, by falsely alleging that Lee Harvey Oswald worked for us. We do not recommend that discussion of the assassination question be initiated where it is not already taking place. Where discussion is active, however, addressees are requested: A, to discuss the publicity problem with liaison and friendly elite contacts, especially politicians and editors. Urge them to use their influence. B, to employ propaganda assets. Book reviews and feature articles are particularly appropriate for the purpose. This is the internal memo that many people point to as the smoking gun, unequivocally proving that the CIA purposefully popularized the term in order to facilitate a cover-up and deceptively discredit anyone who questioned the official line as a communist sympathizer who might as well be Lee Harvey Oswald. And that is exactly why I'm proud to embrace the moniker conspiracy theorist because we have to, it's almost like if we don't, right, then we're giving them some sort of victory, and because it is clearly using it as a pejorative. It no longer works when we live in a world surrounded by conspiracy, right? So if that helps dismiss these ideas in the psychological framework of the average person, then so be it, because they designed it for that reason. But I, for one, am more than happy to embrace this concept and this sort of title of conspiracy theorist, because I refuse to accept the mainstream narrative at face value. And I think that once you've learned enough, then you've been exposed to enough of these events. That should be your bottom line, right? That should be exactly how you approach these ideas. So, um, let's see. What are you guys saying in here? Blinken equals Mossad. Yeah. I mean, fairly, basically, but Trump and Bibi predicted the terrorist attacks on the tower in their books before it happened. They must have great intel information, says KT Stereotypes. Yeah, they must. When these manufactured patsies mess up, the red herring they feed the public is laughable once you recognize their methods. Absolutely, my friend. But yeah, as I said, I think it's very important for us, to kind of rid them of the power that that dismissive term has given them, right? And it's clearly just been a means of undermining any alternative narrative. But we have to remain, headstrong in regard to anyone, leveraging that term against you. No, absolutely not. You should be proud to be a conspiracy theorist, because the vast majority of history has been whitewashed and a manufactured fairy tale, in order to placate the revolutionary class and maintain the current system in its very state of oppressive, authoritarian, right, legislative techniques and all these various, it's the gradual tiptoe that we consistently discuss. And that's one thing I'll always love David Icke for, is the gradual tiptoe toward totalitarianism, because it's just such a wonderful concept, as far as it's so accurate and spot on in regard to, our current position in this sort of globalist framework and agenda. And so I see I see Alex Jones right now. And I've been very skeptical for a long time about Alex Jones and his role in this sort of community, but it you talk about limited hangouts and constructed personalities and compromised personas, and it's just the entire scandal that was the trial of Schmandy Schmook, I guess I should say. It very much made me think that this was the taboo third rail they intended to construct, right? To keep us unable to ask the questions that are necessary, to understand the unfortunate place that we are in this moment. And that is what inevitably took place within that show trial, and and so when you serve a purpose to the very operators who are constructing this false reality, I'm very skeptical of your intentions, and then there are so many other things to factor in to that sort of perspective, and character, I guess, as far as like just attempting to assess his character and to begin with. But it's very difficult not to believe that a lot of these assets within the media landscape have been compromised for a very long time. And so to see him kind of having these emotional, just acting as if Elon Musk is taking down the globalists, right? And is just that's a red herring, right, in my mind, and absolutely just a ridiculous idea, because knowing who Elon Musk is and his direct connections to, these special interest groups and the true power brokers that run this unfortunate false reality. We it becomes very obvious, right? That especially I had talked about how who had helped Elon with as far as financing the acquisition of Twitter, and it's kind of hilarious because here we should actually I'll show you guys. I pulled it up. It's unfortunate because some of these Washington Post articles they paywall so quickly. And so I've been attempting to I've been attempting to like take screenshots, worst case scenario, if I need to. That way I can at least have it for, future reference. But it makes it a little more difficult to pull up, obviously. But the first thing that I wanted to show was this paywalled article regarding a federal judge ordering Elon to unseal the list of shareholders, because we might as well discuss it for a moment, just to kind of drive home the reality of the true power brokers behind the scenes, right? Because it's never the created personalities and larger than life personas that have been presented to the public, because that's usually always the political theater aspect of it all, to kind of I would say it's almost a way of plowing the field to create this fertile ground, right? And it's kind of this this strange technique, but it is very, very effective, especially considering this unfortunate reality of, and I can kind of speak to this as far as personally, because I grew up, kind of worshiping celebrity culture in a lot of ways. I had been very conditioned, and I was, falling into that trap of idolizing celebrities and molding my ideas and my ideology off of this sort of misconception and false construct that's designed to demoralize us, but not just that, to it's the moral degradation aspect of it, right? Because if your heroes all died at 27 from drug overdoses, or and have CIA backgrounds from Laurel Canyon or something, like Jim Morrison and all of these different people you can point to as a perfect example of kind of worshiping false idols that very much represent a as I said, a moral, a degrading ethical I would say just framework for society, right? Because clearly we've been there's been like this overwhelming attempt at cultural degradation when it comes to the United States and the West, and it's been achieved globally in many ways, but specifically with in the vein of Hollywood and its influence on United States culture in the West, right? And especially our youth. And that's what happened to, as far as I grew up in Northwest Arkansas, right? Very small area, rural. And yeah, I was very much just putting these false prophets on this just ridiculous, platform of of admiration, and in no way was it deserving, right? And I see that with young people today, right? It's just a kind of a recycled tactic that takes place, is and you see these unfortunate celebrities that are clearly, so many of them don't tend to be even that talented. It's almost like this, again, a created personality, a construct, and yeah, and then just given all of the right, the let's say the production companies clearly, you know, facilitate their rise, and all of that is manufactured, you know, and so it's just an unfortunate thing when you find yourself, right, uh, admiring people with no sort of real moral ethical foundation that's worthwhile, and then you wonder why you find yourself embracing bad ideas and you know, falling down into this unfortunate ethical trap that's been laid for us. It just makes all the sense in the world, um, as to how you would, you know, successfully, you know, target the domestic population. So psychologically, no doubt. But anyway, so the whole point of what I was saying about Elon's acquisition of Twitter, a soul trap, absolutely a cult examiner. That is exactly what it is. And yeah, Northwest Arkansas is a beautiful place, buddy. I need to go back, see my family soon. But yeah, so let me share this with you because this is something that I think is also worth talking about. And my God, man, it starts to make a lot more sense as to why Elon Musk is sort of in such a powerful position in this moment. He finds himself kind of conducting foreign policy in many ways. I mean, just talk about how he had just kind of leveraged his power over Germany by saying, just suggesting how many investments he has in the country, and it's kind of that alone should be eye-opening for people, right? Because this is an individual from the private sector, we're intended to believe, right? Very much like a Peter Thiel, sort of, right? But again, a Peter Thiel isn't from the private sector. I mean, Palantir was created as a defense contractor, you know, so um, uh, originally before joining the private sector, of course, and Palantir is owned by Peter Thiel, obviously, but I believe their first and only, you know, contract was to the CIA. So it's just it obviously it was entirely constructed by the intelligence community to begin with, and these are all the connections directly behind Elon Musk, and then also the power brokers standing behind Trump at this moment. So this is from the Washington Post, right? And it was written in 2024, August 21st. And it goes on to explain that a federal judge had ordered Elon Musk's X to unseal the list of shareholders involved with X Holdings Corporation, giving the public an official look at the investors who aided his $44 billion purchase of the social media platform previously known as Twitter in October 2022. Now, this is where it gets interesting. Shareholders named in the document include some of Silicon Valley's most prominent venture capitalists and entrepreneurs, as well as a fund linked with hip-hop mogul Sean Diddy Combs. So, again, we just discussed how Elon met Jeffrey Epstein at the Edge Foundation and was essentially trained in psychological operations. Well, now we instantly have another direct connection to Diddy, who clearly seems to have been almost very similar to a constructed version of Jeffrey Epstein, just for the hip hop industry and more of the Hollywood aspect of things. And so, not at all surprised that Diddy would show up as being a part of the acquisition of Twitter. And so then this filing lists nearly 100 entities with stakes in X, although many appear to represent different funds controlled by the same firm or person. So again, you're seeing this sort of plausible deniability take effect, because this is how they play this game, bridging that gap between public and private, right? And so it's a, you know, for us to not be fully aware of this technique by now is kind of embarrassing. So we need to be much more aware of how they kind of operate within this framework. And so other investors include, of course, venture capital firm Andreessen Horowitz, who he is very much involved with this he's the one who's on Rogan talking about how we need AI to run the government. So we need an AI government. And it's just, if you can't spot Minority Report, right, and the totalitarian technocratic state forming before your eyes, then I don't know what else I can point to that can kind of help facilitate that. But so not only is Andreessen Horowitz a part of this, but so is Saudi Prince Al-Walid bin Talal Al Saud. So we got the Vegas shooting now. that's basically involved in the acquisition of Twitter. Okay, and now we have Twitter founder, former CEO Jack Dorsey, who apparently was a very prominent role, played a very prominent role in encouraging Elon to go through with the acquisition. And again, you should be very suspicious of that. And then 8VC, a venture capital firm co-founded by Joe Lonsdale, co-founder of intelligence contractor and data analysis platform Palantir. Screwed Up Texas says P. Diddy was groomed by Clive Davis. Absolutely, he was. Yep. And, it's very similar to that of a Les Wexner, sort of. Or, and it's kind of interesting because of the Robert Maxwell connection to introducing Ghislaine to Jeffrey, because I think Jeffrey was clearly already an intelligence asset for Mossad and the CIA. And so, yeah, it makes a lot of sense. They share so many similarities, these two stories. But let's see. Musk is a grift autist with strange sexual habits and Limbaugh's soft, shitty body. You're not wrong, Dr. Eck. That's hilarious. Okay. So lesser-known shareholders listed in the filing include Unipol SI, SPA, an Italian financial services company based in Bologna. Interesting. I don't know. Many of the larger investors had previously been reported, but X had not publicly detailed its stakeholders before. X did not immediately return a request for comment. X originally filed the list of investors under seal as part of a lawsuit brought in 2023 by former Twitter employees who alleged that the entrepreneur violated their arbitration agreements by failing to pay them certain fees after he bought the company. Attorneys for the nonprofit Reporters Committee for Freedom of the Press filed a motion in July asking the court to unseal the records on behalf of independent technology journalist Jacob Silverman. So we ended up getting an unredacted version, luckily. And then there's another follow-up that I wanted to discuss briefly. Let me pull it up. And this one's interesting because this one really lays out who specifically helped the acquisition take place. So let's share this briefly as well. So here's who helped Elon Musk buy Twitter. Elon Musk's $44 billion Twitter takeover has so far been marked by turmoil. After slashing half the company's 7,500 member staff, he's driven away advertisers and created a bigger financial hole for the company. So far, his ideas for bringing in additional money, charging for verification and additional features have failed to make much of a dent. An unscientific poll he launched recently told him to step down as CEO. Okay, so clearly this is the framework of the article, which is from the Washington Post, which is very much anti Elon Musk at this time, which is right when the acquisition took place. So on a Twitter audio chat recently, Musk cited the company's precarious financial position as a driver of his aggressive job cuts and drastic actions, adding that we have an emergency fire drill on our hands. That's making at least some of his investors in the deal antsy, according to people familiar with the matter who spoke on the condition of anonymity for fear of retribution. So here's who initially invested in the deal and what we know about and why. So it's, of course, Prince Al-Walid bin Talal Al Saud, estimated contribution $2 billion. It's just, if you remember the mainstream narrative when Elon was acquiring Twitter, was that this billionaire, basically he was he was a lone wolf acquiring this means of um, like perception manipulation, right? And that basically this right wing billionaire is going to own one of the most important social media platforms, which basically acts as a sort of serves as the public square in many ways, right, at this very moment. And so it's just kind of funny to pair this with that alleged narrative of Elon Musk solely walking in with his kitchen sink, right, and acquiring Twitter on his own. And so, anyway, the Saudi prince agreed in May to convert his shares of Twitter, worth nearly $2 billion, into a stake in the company when Musk took it private. A month earlier, he had publicly sparred with Musk about the company's worth, but later tweeted that Musk would be an excellent leader for Twitter. The prince has previously placed winning bets on Apple, Amazon, and eBay, but his latest Silicon Valley investment has drawn skepticism in Washington. President Biden and some members of Congress have called on officials to examine the role of Saudi Arabia and other countries in the Twitter deal. Now we have the Qatar Investment Authority. So Elon Musk hanging out during the World Cup final match between Argentina and France with the leader of the Qatar Investment Authority, who apparently contributed up to $375 million to the acquisition of Twitter. And he's spotted with Ibrahim Al Mahmoud, I believe, the CEO of Qatar Investment Authority, but known for its investments in companies including Barclays, Credit Suisse, and Volkswagen. The $450 billion fund has an expansive footprint across the globe and counts itself among Musk's investors, putting up $375 million toward the deal. The fund is fueled by Qatar's liquefied natural gas exports and helps power the Gulf nations' diplomatic and political projects. All right. Now we have Binance, okay, which it's starting to get even more strange because it's interesting who else is a part of this financing the acquisition, especially considering we had just referenced Diddy. But so now Binance, the crypto exchange, $500 million contribution. So the massive cryptocurrency exchange was recently in the news for backing out of its plans to acquire FTX, a rival exchange co-founded by Sam Bankman-Fried that has since collapsed. Shortly after Musk's initial bid for Twitter, Binance contacted him and committed $500 million toward the purchase. So again, the exchange's executives have said they support Musk's desire to curb the presence of bots on the platform. They have also said they see Twitter as an opportunity to research and develop crypto-related technology and services, including payments and authentication. So of course, this is a part of the Everything app, as far as the ultimate goal of the acquisition of Twitter, I believe, was, to create the Everything app, obviously mirroring WeChat, which we discussed before, China's WeChat. And it's just, again, it's a mechanism and a tool for totalitarianism and authoritarian control. And it just fits perfectly within the framework of the technocratic state, the technocracy. So as a part of the deal, anyone who invested $250 million or more gets special access to confidential company information, but giving that privilege to foreign investors is raising flags with Biden and U.S. officials. Of particular interest is whether that includes access to personal data about Twitter's users, since several of the entities are entwined with governments that have a history of cracking down on dissidents on Twitter and other online platforms. So again, remember the Twitter files. This was supposed to be, our alternative option. And in reality, again, this is just proving out to have been a misdirection, a tactic of misdirection and smoke and mirrors once more, which is okay. We'll pass the keys from our asset Jack Dorsey to our new asset Elon Musk, and and I believe that due to his popularity and his, various relationships with people who like Joe Rogan, who are extremely popular and have, I think, done him a great service as far as his marketing strategy is concerned. Having people on like Musk, Peter Thiel, Andreessen, he's had legitimately almost every one of these people he's had on the show, which that worries me in a little bit in itself, but um either way, I'm hoping that it's just based off of pure naivete and being kind of just unfortunately kind of just being a a victim of your success in many ways. I hope that's the case with Joe Rogan, and that it's nothing more like that, because that would be a very, very sad prospect to imagine that he would be compromised. But I definitely believe that at the very least they've attempted to, you know, the intelligence community has attempted to set up some sort of pipeline to the alternative media landscape again. So if gaining, an opportunity to go on a platform such as Joe Rogan and spew these ideas is that's concerning. It's very concerning, and is for just the overall state of again this individual going on Joe Rogan and talking about how we need AI government and effectively convincing Rogan that this was plausible and a viable option for the future, because what he doesn't realize is that within that technocratic framework is this built-in plausible deniability aspect of, well, it's due to your artificially intelligent overlord that it's not our fault, right? So the political class can, kind of dodge bullets, but it's a minority report, um, science fiction plot line is truly what it becomes, and so yeah, this is an interesting take. Musk, Thiel, and Rogan greater than Dorsey, Soros, Ben Shapiro. Interesting, but I don't see much of a difference at all, right, between those two groups. I kind of think that is that falls perfectly within the vein of the two-party delusion of how um, there are we're supposed to embrace the idea that there is a plausible alternative to this current state of affairs, and once you come to find out that unfortunately George Soros is deeply tied in with funding Jared Kushner's cadre, and that they're very, very deeply tied in with the exact same individuals who are in about to transition into the White House, then you kind of break free from that unfortunate approach as far as the political, partisan perspective of it, falling within the sort of lens of the culture war, because it does, to me, it very much presents itself as the the smoke and mirrors, the clandestine lack of an alternative, right? And but yet they present to the public as if you have two options, right? And that, based on your ideological preference, you will fall within that framework, and it's a trap, and manufactured for this exact purpose. And so I see no real difference between George Soros and Peter Thiel. I believe that ultimately they sort of have the same benchmarks and goals in mind in order to achieve this ultimate totalitarian state. And so again, it's by design that these individuals are making the rounds on these prominent platforms and seeding these narratives and these ideas, they're misconceptions, right? And so this individual, one of the most famous venture capital firms in Silicon Valley. This firm has invested in Airbnb, Lyft, and Coinbase. Co-founder Mark Andreessen was one of the people who privately messaged Musk about the Twitter deal, according to court filings. If you are considering equity partners, my growth fund is in for $250 million with no additional work required, Andreessen wrote. I'm sure he won't receive anything in exchange for his $250 million donation. But so anyway, his firm would go on to give even $400 million. He has cheered on Musk in recent weeks on Twitter, particularly during the release of the Twitter files, a string of releases on behavior inside the company before the takeover. So it's very much like in the vein of Doge, right? Doge, because I said this when Elon first did that Spaces with Trump, right after the original assassination attempt, and he suggested the idea of having some economic efficiency program created, and he suggested that, I would love to head that to Trump, and I said, of course you would, Elon, because then you would become, the deciding factor when it boils down to who are the winners and losers in the economic landscape, right? And so he gets to now be the individual who makes those decisions. And of course, you're going to have all of these special interest groups who helped him, rise to this position, will receive their due reward. And that is by design. Again, that's how these individuals operate. So, we live in a feudalist system, right? And so you talk about class warfare, and so I find it very unfortunate that, people who couldn't even conceptualize their lifestyle will come to their defense, right? And again, I think it's an unfortunate vulnerability and naive aspect of just not being quite, entirely aware of the true position you find yourself in, and the actual power brokers and how they've designed this current structured system, and it's designed to their benefit in many ways, and so we're at a disadvantage from day one, right? And so it's very important for us to get past this vulnerability and allow this naive veil to fall to the wayside once and for all, because how else are we going to contend with these subversive techniques, that these psychological warfare planners that are just so, talk about sadistic, right? They're targeting our children. They're targeting, the very ideological framework of it. They're eroding the dynamic between, the family unit and parents and their children. And that is what the current system of as far as the public education system is designed to do. It's designed to create that ideological gap and stoke that tension. And so again, it becomes an excruciating process when you realize people are embracing ideas that are only going to have a negative impact on their lives and the people they love and their families, and so we're being sold, we are being sold a false construct of reality itself. And, the longer we embrace that false reality, the more of a risk we run. And so the co-founder, Ben Horowitz, said in several tweets that the venture capital firm believes in Elon's brilliance, right, to make Twitter what it was meant to be. Horowitz went on to say that Twitter suffers from a range of issues, including censorship, He said that Musk was, yeah, okay. So that clearly worked out, right? Because now, hey, you guys, you better be posting positive or else we're going to have an issue, right? So Horowitz went on to say that Twitter suffers from the range of issues, including censorship. He said that Musk was perhaps the only person in the world who could build the public square people hoped for, echoing the praise that conservatives have directed toward Musk, who they see as a champion of free speech. All right. That was before the algorithm tweak, of course. But yeah, we always have to look deeper, my friend. It is scary for sure, but but we have to be willing to learn these things. Exactly. I think you're spot on with that, buddy. And the more you are willing to remain open-minded, right, and objective within the context of this research, then the better off you are, and I think the more likely you are to find yourself coming to a legitimate conclusion that is worthwhile, right? And most of the time, I mean, it's very difficult to speak in certain terms about a lot of things, right? And it's what's most important is to kind of have an understanding of the comprehensive understanding of sort of the power structure, I think, in itself. I think that's what matters more than anything, is to be able to kind of understand how this system is structured, to create this disadvantage inherently. And so, yeah, the left right, the left right paradigm is largely, a misconception and what I believe to have been clearly created to stoke division and create these cultural issues and debates where, well, we can't even agree on fundamental facts of reality itself, let alone having some some legitimate debate that's dealing with policy positions and government legislation. Like I see that. So it's just like we're so far away from that being a possibility. It's kind of it's almost amusing. But so Sequoia Capital, of course, they pledged $800 million to this acquisition, and they have backed DoorDash, Zoom, 23andMe. So we're seeing just sort of like this new age monopolistic system in place where all these special interest groups are directly benefiting from this, from the way this has all been, just again, if you are financing DoorDash, Zoom, 23andMe, and then the acquisition of Twitter, I mean, you are basically being very well represented in almost every facet of reality itself, let alone like the economy and these various industries, right? So a partner at the firm has known Musk for decades and was hired by him to work on what would become PayPal. So this individual is, of course, a member of the PayPal mafia. And Sequoia has also invested in Musk's other ventures, SpaceX and the Boring Company. Elon has succeeded in many different industries. During an interview at a Wall Street Journal conference in October, this individual said, so he's an incredible first principles thinker, allegedly. So what do they get? Some of the biggest players in Silicon Valley are now tied to Twitter's future. They will expect a major return on their investments, and their influence ensures that they can throw their weight around. How Musk decides to run the company, who he hires and promotes, and what features and products he emphasizes will reveal the role these investors will play in the new private Twitter. But as their messages and public comments suggest, they're also trying to get into Musk's good graces. So, Larry Ellison, billion-dollar contribution. Co-founder and chairman of the software company Oracle, Larry Ellison is known for his lavish spending. The tech titan, whom Musk counts as a friend, purchased the Hawaiian island of Lanai in 2012. Earlier this year, he texted Musk, Elon, I do think we need another Twitter. Ellison would go on to pledge $1 billion to Musk's purchase. The billionaire has cultivated ties with Donald Trump, hosting the president in 2020 at his estate in California's Coachella Valley and giving millions to Republican candidates and committees, according to filings with the Federal Election Commission. So You want to know who, and of course Jack Dorsey is also involved, but um, Larry Ellison is kind of hilarious because, well, not really, but the what I think is worth pointing out is that he clearly has this strange background of directly being tied to the CIA as far as the Oracle project was concerned in general. And so here is, I got to show you this. This is so crazy because I had just, honestly, I had just seen this a couple days ago, and now that we're discussing who helped finance the acquisition and Larry Ellison being one of the prominent members, um, this now becomes even more relevant. So um, this is a Gizmodo article written by Matt Novak and published on September 19th, 2014. Larry Ellison's Oracle started as a CIA project. So yesterday, Vox somehow managed to write an entire article about the history of Oracle and its founder, Larry Ellison, without mentioning the CIA even once, which is pretty astounding given the fact that Oracle takes its name from a 1977 CIA project codename and that the CIA was Oracle's first customer. So exactly, yeah, hit the like button, everybody. Like, share. As well. But yeah, is that not just extraordinary that that this would actually be said as far as the CIA was Oracle's first customer, and we had just mentioned the fact that um, the exact same thing is as far as in regard to Palantir, right? So Palantir is also a company where their very first customer was the CIA, right? And so Vox simply says that Oracle was founded in the late 1970s and sells a line of software products that help large and medium-sized companies manage their operations, all of which is true. But as the article continues, it somehow ignores the fact that Oracle has always been a significant player in the national security industry, and that its founder would not have made his billions without helping to build the tools of our modern surveillance state. Recognizing, so this is the guy who put up $1 billion for the acquisition of Twitter with Elon Musk and has a prominent role within the Trump administration. And again, directly points out this vital role that these unelected bureaucrats and oligarchs, clearly provide and serve in our current system as it's structured. So believing that one individual is going to come into power and change the world for the better of society, it's just I cannot grasp that perspective. It's very cartoonish to me, and so no one rises to any of these positions without special interest groups entirely financing their rise. And so it's just I don't believe that worshiping, because that is basically what happens is people begin to worship power in general, right? And so people are under this false misconception that if only my guy gets into this position of power, then we can leverage it to our advantage. And and clearly the real issue is that basically you lord over your political enemies for the next 4 to 8 years, yes, within the context of a broken system. Exactly, my friend. And so how is that a victory of any kind? It's just in my mind, let alone the what I believe to be sort of utilizing the state as a tool to begin with is almost immoral to me and unethical inherently, right? And so I do have an issue with that. I'm not a statist. I never will be. I don't believe it's my role to decide for my neighbor as long as they aren't committing violent crimes and clearly violating the NAP, the non-aggression principle, or theft of property, then I kind of think there really aren't too many other things that uh, you know except violent crime, of course, that you have to concern yourself with. And so it's not my job to choose the ideological preference of right of anyone other than myself. And so it's very difficult for me to ever think that it's within my right, to kind of crucify my principles onto my neighbor. I think that is such a again, inherently immoral and an unethical misconception that we have to break free from. And that doesn't mean that we can't you know hold opinions and positions that will, of course, b- provide a better result for our future. But it's just like this naive um you know perspective of utilizing power to your benefit. I just think it's an inherently flawed principle, right? And so I'm not ever going to fall into that category. Unfortunately, it's just not. It's not. At least as of now, that's sort of not my ideological standpoint, right? And so, but still, we must recognize the potential demand for a commercial database product, says Ellison, right? This founder or this individual who put up $1 billion to Elon for the acquisition, and founder of Oracle. So that's what he says when he founded the company that became Oracle in 1977. Recognizing the potential demand for a commercial database product, Ellison founded this company that became Oracle, and that's according to Vox. So conspicuously omitting the whole because CIA wanted a relational database part of the history. So a relational database was the key priority, right? Um, and so, and also I think that I've talked about um, sort of, you know, these grassroots movements entirely being astroturfed and infiltrated at the local level. So when people say, well, change only happens at the local level, well, that's great. That's wonderful. But when you have all of these different organizations that have been constructed by who? Special interest groups, financed by special interest groups, um, you know, uh, they clearly kind of are. It's kind of insane because they also present these training courses for essentially this progressive ideology that will help aid and facilitate this whole agenda as well. And so you find this astroturfed grassroots movement all over the nation, and people, unfortunately, they misconstrue this to actually be organic and authentic. And so it provides false hope, and it's a very sad state of affairs that, as far as how this whole agenda has kind of formed around local politics. But understanding and realizing the fact that you're having mayors come in from all over the world, basically, that aren't even from the area, and 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 people aren't even skeptical of that to begin with. Well, then, right, we this is something we have to contend with before we even begin to believe that there's a way forward to kind of reconstruct the system to begin with, right? And so um I thank you so much, guys. I appreciate what you're saying. Occult Examiner says there needs to be a million more channels like this. I can't thank you guys enough just for being here. Honestly, it means the world to me. All of this is something that I've been passionately obsessing over for a very long time, is just kind of attempting to conceptualize the structure of power for myself to where I feel like I have a fundamental working understanding, and of how this actually operates, right? How this has been facilitated, and I think how it's achieved so much, right, for so long with such little acknowledgement. That's the other aspect of it. The vast majority of the public are just falling into that delusion and into that trap on a consistent basis. And so I've just gotten to a point where I'm so desperate to kind of answer a lot of these questions for myself that I just like I couldn't be more grateful that I set out on this path to kind of find like-minded individuals, mainly due to the fact that I felt so alone in my ideas. I felt so isolated, and COVID had a lot to do with that, right? Because I was out here in Los Angeles during that time, and yeah, it was a very strange experience, but it was something that I hold very precious because it kind of helped restructure my philosophy in a way, my philosophical framework, and my appreciation, for what really truly matters most, I think, and yeah, I don't know. I think the last thing I want to do is is you know the last thing that I want to do is provide another false narrative in this landscape that is so just you know oversaturated with deception, that all I was hoping to do was bring the ideas forward, bring the evidence that I accumulated to the table that again has convinced me that these narratives are entirely, you know, just a deception, right? A falsity in itself, and created to sort of, keep us within that psychological, deception and trap in itself. And so, looking at all of these different special interest groups and who's financing the current structured system that we find ourselves in, it kind of brings more clarity and understanding to the overall globalist framework and everything that we're facing in this very moment. So we might as well come to a close here in just a moment, because there's a lot more we could cover. I had a few other things pulled up too that I thought we might inevitably get to, but on the in the vein of what I'm kind of talking about in this very moment, I feel like hopefully I don't get um, flagged for playing this. It's not very long, but it's something that I think, um, for me, uh, this resonated because it's funny. I remember watching this show when it first came out, and it was the first season or two were actually really well made. I enjoyed it. It felt it was a very strange experience as an audience member, but Mr. Robot was it was kind of interesting because of how in certain ways it was there were certain scenes that were very accurate in as far as the modern day correlation to you know the current paradigm we're in. And there's this one specific scene that I saw recently again, and it really just reminded me of how valuable this was, as far as we've been discussing how you know we're largely witnessing political theater to such a ridiculous extent, right? And so we're questioning our own eyes. We can't quite believe, right, at what we see, and so what is real? Like that is kind of like the thematic, philosophical question behind this scene, and it really just kind of it as far as a representation of the current state of things, right? Psyop season, you know, this upcoming year, and these sort of all these narratives being put forward by these intelligence assets, um, then this might actually, as far as I think it applies, very accurately. And so it's only a minute and 8 seconds long, but let me show you this real quick, and then we'll get out of here. But I will, by the way, I'll be here, of course, again tonight for Already Dead. Jose and I and Jules will be here at 9:30 Eastern time. So yeah, make sure you show up tonight. But yeah, check this out real quick.
You're not real. You're not real.
What? You are? Is any of it real? I mean, look at this. Look at it! A world built on fantasy. Synthetic emotions in the form of pills. Psychological warfare in the form of advertising. Mind-altering chemicals in the form of food. Brainwashing seminars in the form of media. Isolated bubbles in the form of social networks. Real? You want to talk about reality? We haven't lived in anything remotely close to it since the turn of the century. Turned it off, took out the batteries, snacked on a bag of GMOs while we tossed the remnants in the ever-expanding dumpster of the human. We live in branded houses, trademarked by corporations, built on bipolar numbers, jumping up and down on digital displays, hypnotizing us into the biggest slumber mankind has ever seen. You have to dig pretty deep, kiddo, before you can find anything real. We live in a kingdom of bullshit.
All right. I just thought that to kind of drive home this overall, the overarching point of kind of the theme of this episode. Yeah, they've always told us, right? And that's something that I find very strange, that they provide us the rope to hang ourselves with. It's like it's that philosophical conundrum. It's this strange. I've heard it described as subverting karma, the consequences of the right. It's like a subverting the karmic consequences, how I've heard it put. And yeah, it is a screwed up. Texas says they want to drive you to despair. I do believe there's an agenda of demoralization that's very much long-standing and has been occurring for quite some time, more than we're I imagine very much longer than we're aware of. And you can point to the Tavistock Institute and the Frankfurt School and these psychological warfare planners and the techniques that they've sophisticated over time, and the hypnotizing and the various drugs that they've used, and I mean, it's so much more than that, right? It's fascinating, honestly, but it's very dark. And but what is real, right? And that's what I'm finding. I'm finding myself in this position where I'm questioning this very frequently. What are they capable of, right? And it's a fascinating idea and concept, but we must remain skeptical at all times, not fall into the partisan delusion and the trap that is political theater, and remember the fact that there will be ethical consequences, karmic consequences for this. And I don't believe that there's any sort of way to subvert to escape that true fact of life, which is you never get away with it, right? So even if they achieve a lifelong career of sadistic abuse and just accumulate unfeasible wealth, it's still, you realize these people are psychopaths, right? And a lot of them have convinced themselves that they're good people. It's a very strange thing, but I heard a victim of sexual abuse just explain this the other day, and that was that her abuser, a lot of them, they would legitimately convinced themselves that they were good people, even though they were committing just sadistic, heinous abuse to young children. They still somehow were convincing themselves that they were good people, and that is just strange psychologically, but it makes a lot of sense that even some of the darkest and most sadistic among us would have to justify these things to themselves internally. And that's why I think a lot of these, abusers, they convince their victims that it's their fault, right? And it's like a psychological tactic to avoid that karmic consequence, at least directly, you know? And so, yeah, I believe in karma. I just, I don't know, too much in my life I've experienced, but as far as just feeling a karmic reaction, but who knows? And it's just my personal belief. It but yeah, it is very strange and worthwhile at least addressing and acknowledging a lot of this. So again, I'm almost done 2 hours. So I'm just at this point I've been rambling about so much shit, but I appreciate the hell out of all of you. Um, Again, follow me at the Underclass Podcast. The best places to like or to support me are our Buzzsprout or Patreon. Again, I had mentioned I'm going to get that Rumble created by the end of the week, like I said, within the week. So just keep that in mind because we won't continue to stream to Jose's YouTube and to his Twitter. We were just kind of doing that at the beginning to sort of introduce the concept to everyone. But yeah, so I'll get that Rumble up and running, and we'll start doing these live streams on a more frequent basis as we have been in the past few days. So I think this is a good, format. And again, like there's I felt a little scatterbrained this morning, but I still think like we kind of made some points that were worthwhile and went over a few certain things that, the very least, acknowledging who financed the acquisition of Twitter starts to make a lot of sense as far as the end result and where we're sort of heading in this as far as just the agenda itself is concerned. So I appreciate you guys and don't miss Already Dead tonight, 9:30 Eastern time, 6:30 Pacific. And as I said, I will be doing an episode on the Delphi murders, which again I said I would talk about today. But at some point we will discuss Richard Allen because it's very sad what has taken place with the sentencing hearing recently, and they barred a lot of the evidence from ever being publicly exposed as well. So autopsy photos and photos of the crime scene, various things. So it just fits the cover up playbook, pattern recognition, as we always see. But yeah, again, thank you guys for showing up. I think Jose will probably do the morning stream for the next few days, but we'll talk about it tonight, and I'll let you guys know what we have planned and in store. So, I didn't realize I've been sharing my screen for like the whole episode, but anyway, all right, guys, I'll try and do a better job engaging with you as frequently as possible. I appreciate you, brother. Thank you. You said good stream. Thanks. See y'all tonight. And and Rotting Jewels, Dana's channel is great. It is great to learn a lot of history of this stuff. Absolutely, it is. I think that Dana Duda does phenomenal work with especially the Process Church of the Final Judgment, which, oh my God, I forgot to mention Lucifer's Lodge. I found out about this book. I'll talk about it later. I'll talk about it probably tonight or something. But it's about, man, it's strange as hell, but it directly connects the Process Church members to the Archdiocese of Boston and basically directly connecting them to the Spotlight child abuse scandal. So not at all shocked as far as that's concerned, but I'm going to have to get deeper into that book because it's called Lucifer's Lodge, and it paints this this very terrifying picture of a far more of a connection between the Catholic Church and the Archdiocese in Boston to the Process Church of the Final Judgment. So of course that would be the case. But anyway, again, can't thank you guys enough. You guys have a wonderful day, and I'll catch you tonight. So later on.